We are mirrors whose brightness, if we are bright, is wholly derived from the sun that shines upon us. What would it look like to let that brightness be reflected onto others, rather than consumed by our own need to speak? Think about it. How often do you find yourself desperately wanting to be heard, to prove your value through the endless details of your life? Maybe it's not just a habit, perhaps it's a yearning for connection, a need to be validated, and a way to quiet the whispers of insecurity that tell you you're not enough unless you're seen, unless you're heard. Yet, deep down, does the constant sharing truly soothe the ache, or does it sometimes make it worse? You pour out story after story, trying to find a sense of worth, hoping someone will notice you, understand you, and tell you that you're enough. But sometimes, the more we talk, the more disconnected we feel. We're left wondering why we still feel empty, unheard, or unseen, despite how much we try to fill the silence. There's a part of us, a longing, an aching need that desires to be understood deeply, to feel that our life matters beyond just words. But often, the irony is that in trying to make ourselves understood, we miss the very moment where understanding is possible, the present. Lewis challenges us to a different kind of presence, a self-forgetfulness that doesn't come from feeling less, but from being free to see more. We are so used to telling our stories, explaining ourselves, giving context, and recounting events, that we forget the beauty of simply being. There's a kind of freedom that comes from not having to narrate your life, from allowing the world to be, and finding your place within it rather than trying to impose your voice over it. Imagine this: every time you speak, it's as if you're throwing a stone into the water. Each word causes ripples, but too many stones create waves that obscure the stillness beneath. When we throw in fewer stones, when we learn to sit by the water in silence, that's when we can see the reflection clearly. This reflection is not just of our lives, but of the lives around us, the people who are silently yearning to be seen and heard too, the world that quietly speaks when we allow it to. The need to share constantly might come from a deep-seated fear that your life, in its silence, might not matter, that the unspoken moments somehow lose their meaning if they're not shared. But let's explore that fear for a moment. Is it truly the words that give our lives weight, or is it the presence, the attention, and the depth with which we experience life? Sometimes, our pain comes from a fear of being invisible, and we feel we must prove our existence through the stories we tell. But the truth is, your worth has never come from the telling, it comes from the living, from experiencing life as it unfolds, and being fully present to it. If you ever felt that tightness in your chest when silence fills the room, and you rush to speak to fill it, consider this: what would it feel like to let that silence breathe, to rest in it without trying to prove anything? To listen to the story that's unfolding around you, the story of others, of nature, of God's presence in the smallest details of your day. To recognize that sometimes the silence holds a beauty that our words can never capture, a beauty that waits for us to simply be still and notice. Lewis found wisdom in being attentive to the world and in noticing God's hand in every moment, from the laughter of friends to the stillness of a morning mist. He encourages us to step back from our self-centered narrative and embrace the wonder of what's around us. When we stop trying to define ourselves by what we say, we open up to something larger: the opportunity to love, to serve, to notice, and to find God's presence, not just in our words, but in our silence. So, take a moment to ask yourself, where is your attention today? Are you rushing to be heard, to share every detail, every emotion, and every thought to feel like your life has meaning? Or are you open to letting go of that need and discovering what it means to truly connect, not by speaking, but by listening? What might happen if you trusted that your presence alone, without words, carries a value beyond what you could ever explain? Could it be that, in stepping back from your own need to share, you'd find that you are part of a greater story, one where every voice matters, and silence is not an absence but a fullness, a space for real understanding? I encourage you to stay with these questions, to let them sink in, and to reflect on how they might transform your approach to daily life. Have you ever experienced the depth of simply being present, of listening deeply to the heartbeat of those around you. Let's continue this conversation in the comments below. And if this message speaks to you, let me know by liking and sharing. Keep growing, keep listening, and remember sometimes, the most powerful stories are those that are spoken without words, stories heard in the stillness of the soul and in the open space of a willing heart. Can I hear a hallelujah from you? Have you ever felt the urge to share every detail of your life, as if doing so would bring you closer to others? Many of us have. It's as if we believe the more we speak, the more connected we become. Yet, ironically, such oversharing often leads to the opposite, creating barriers rather than building bridges. Like a river overflowing its banks, our words can flood the listener, leaving them overwhelmed, tuning out, or even feeling distant from us. C.S. Lewis once noted that humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. This sentiment urges us to recognize that true intimacy is not forged in endless self-disclosure, but in the quiet moments of presence and empathy. In my own experience, I once felt that pouring out my story would somehow validate my existence, a desperate attempt to be seen, understood, and acknowledged. And while sharing has its place, I soon learned that deep connection isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, it's about being willing to sit with someone else's silence. Have you ever noticed how freeing it feels to truly listen, to be fully immersed in someone else's world without the need to insert your own narrative? It is in these moments, the ones filled with attentive stillness, that we find the purest form of connection. When we practice this selfless listening, we align ourselves with something greater. Imagine, as Lewis did in The Four Loves, that love reaches its height when we focus not on ourselves, but on the other, when we turn our gaze outward. The art of genuine connection calls for humility and an active presence that not only hears but sees. So perhaps it's time to ask ourselves, what would happen if we paused more often to listen, to give space, to become less of the story and more of the witness? When we shift our focus from our own voices to the voices of others, that's when we find something remarkable, something divine taking root within us. That is where the true magic of human connection unfolds, where we learn that sometimes less is more, and in that space, God works wonders. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less." It's a profound thought, isn't it? Consider this: when was the last time you truly listened, not just heard, to the world around you? We often move through life like actors on a stage, consumed by our own dialogues, forgetting to pause and marvel at the beauty of the world that surrounds us. But what if we let go of the need to always be the speaker? What if, instead, we chose to become the observer, letting our eyes truly see, our ears truly hear? Imagine walking through a park, a sanctuary of life where flowers bloom with colors that speak louder than words, and birds sing in harmonies of joy and freedom. But what happens when, instead of soaking in the serenity, we are engrossed in our own chatter, detailing every trivial moment of our day to an unseen audience? We miss the grace of each flower's unfurling, the wind's whispered secrets. We miss the moment. Could it be that our obsession with our own stories blinds us to the wonder in God's creation? Lewis often emphasized that self-focus leads to an inward spiral, trapping us within our own small world of worries and desires. He portrayed it as a kind of blindness, where we fail to see not just the glory of God around us, but the stories, struggles, and joys of others. To be present means to see the sacredness in silence, to find joy in simply being a witness to life. How often do we allow our own noise to drown out the voice of God whispering to us through the natural world, or through the heart of another person? In our hurried narratives, we forget that listening is an act of love towards others and ourselves. It is the chance to step outside our stories and see the world from a different view. It's the opportunity to be humbled, to recognize the beauty in the pauses, the wisdom in silence. In a world where we crave to be heard, maybe the greatest gift we can offer is to listen. And in listening, perhaps we'll find that life is not about filling the air with our own words, but about breathing in the wonder of all that's spoken to us without words. C.S. Lewis once said, "To love is to be vulnerable, but have you ever wondered what that vulnerability looks like in your daily life?" It's not just about opening your heart to love, It's also about listening, truly listening. Often, we mistake listening for waiting to speak. But what if we saw listening as an act of love, a means to deeply understand another's soul? Imagine a conversation where you're not simply waiting for a chance to share your own story, but where you intentionally ask questions, linger on their words, and allow silence to work its way into your understanding. This art of listening, as Lewis alludes in his works, is not just a skill but a spiritual practice. How often do we really allow ourselves to be fully present? It's a rare gift in a world buzzing with distractions and self-promotion. And yet, when we quiet our own need to be heard, we create space for others to be seen, deeply seen. Think of a time when someone listened to you without interruption or judgment. Didn't it feel like you were the most important person in the world? When you start listening with empathy, you unlock doors to new perspectives and deeper human connections. Conversations become opportunities for growth, as you're not only taking in their words but absorbing their emotions and experiences. As Lewis emphasized, our humility is a gateway to understanding others, leading to mutual transformation. The beauty is that when you have something meaningful to share, a moment of wisdom or comfort, it will resonate more profoundly. Why? Because your voice will carry the weight of someone who has cared to listen first. Your words will be received as an offering of sincerity, not a pursuit of validation. So ask yourself what would happen if you turned every conversation into a chance to genuinely know someone. How might your relationships change if you let go of the need to be understood first and chose instead to understand? Remember, listening isn't just hearing, it's an act of love, of vulnerability, the very essence of what it means to connect with another human being. True listening is a rare gift, one that requires intentional presence and a willingness to step outside oneself. Think for a moment, when was the last time you truly listened without waiting for your turn to speak? It's easy to fall into the habit of constant broadcasting, as if our lives must be displayed in every moment. Yet, as C.S. Lewis insightfully reminds us, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. This humility in conversation, being fully present with another person, creates deeper connections than any story we might tell. Have you ever noticed that those who listen with genuine interest leave a mark on you? An unspoken impression that makes you feel seen. When we listen more than we speak, we find ourselves not only enriching our own lives but nurturing the souls around us. Conversations become a place where lives intertwine, and the threads of mutual understanding and compassion weave a tapestry far more intricate than any single person's story alone. Yet, how often do we speak to fill silence, rather than allowing the stillness to invite another's voice? It's tempting to think that sharing our experiences brings us closer to others, and yes, sharing is a vital part of connection. But there's a delicate line between sharing with purpose and oversharing out of an unconscious desire to be heard or validated. Have you considered how your words might affect the listener? Do they uplift, encourage, or inspire, or do they simply echo your need to be understood? C.S. Lewis once observed that we read to know we are not alone. Similarly, we speak and share stories to find companionship in our experiences. But imagine the beauty of speaking less to allow others to share their story with you. When you listen intently, you offer a mirror reflecting the other's worth and experiences. The silence becomes a sanctuary where they are free to express without interruption or judgment. Practice this next time you're in a conversation. Hold back the urge to speak immediately. Sit in that stillness and hear not just words but emotions and unspoken stories. Watch how this opens doors to authentic connection and how your own understanding deepens. Listening isn't passive, it is an active way of loving, one that Christ himself modeled. And in doing so, not only will you become more connected to others, but you'll also find your own life becoming richer and more meaningful, an echo of God's greater story. Think back to a moment when someone opened up to you in a way that made your heart swell with understanding and connection. Their words were not a torrent of details or a monologue of personal experiences. Instead, they shared something that touched a deeper chord, a part of their soul that reflected your own hidden struggles, dreams, or doubts. Remember how that felt? Such encounters remind us of what C.S. Lewis once wrote: friendship is born at that moment when one person says to another, "What, you too? I thought I was the only one." This kind of sharing isn't about unloading burdens or claiming the spotlight, it's about offering a piece of oneself, a story or experience that forms a bridge between two hearts, creating that cherished feeling of being seen and understood in a vast and sometimes isolating world. But here lies the challenge: how do we discern the right time to share our thoughts and when to simply hold space for another? How do we walk the tightrope between offering ourselves openly and listening with a quiet heart? Perhaps the answer lies in humility and self-awareness. As you look inward, consider how you approach your conversations. Are your words gifts that extend grace to others, or do they aim to return the focus back to your own narrative? Do you rush to fill every silence, fearing what might rise in the stillness? And when the conversation ends, are you left feeling drained, as if you've missed the true heart of the exchange? In moments like these, Lewis's insight can guide us. He speaks of the beauty of surrendering our egos to allow genuine connection. The first step is to forget about self altogether. Sometimes the most profound acts of love are not in what we say, but in the silences we allow, spaces where others can find the courage to speak and be heard. True sharing is not an outpouring of self, but a careful weaving together of souls, where vulnerability meets attentive listening, and connection blossoms from both what is said and what is held gently in silence. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling misunderstood or perhaps unheard? It happens to all of us, and sometimes it leaves a hollow feeling, as if something was lost in translation. C.S. Lewis once said, "We are mirrors whose brightness, if we are bright, is wholly derived from the sun that shines upon us in our interactions. Are we reflecting that light, that true intention, or are we merely speaking to be seen?" To deepen our connections, consider starting each conversation with a heart of purpose. Before you speak, ask yourself not just what you intend to say, but why. Why do you feel compelled to share this particular thought? What is it that your heart truly wants to convey or receive? Imagine if every word spoken was meant to build bridges, to heal wounds, or to uncover hidden joy. When you align your communication with purpose, you practice what Lewis described as the art of listening with the soul, and perhaps this practice shifts your focus from seeking to be heard to becoming a vessel for understanding. It's not just about proving a point or receiving affirmation, but about creating a sacred space where words flow to connect, to learn, and to lift up others. In those moments, you move away from the need for validation and toward a deeper understanding of others. You don't just talk, you listen with your entire being. So, how different would your interactions be if they were less about filling silence and more about enriching it? By setting an intention before each dialogue, you're not merely having a conversation, you're sowing seeds of connection, peace, and purpose. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "The first demand of any work of art makes upon us is surrender. Look, listen, receive, but how often do we truly pause to listen, surrendering our need to speak? Imagine if, in every conversation, we took a moment to ask ourselves not just whether we're ready to share, but whether sharing is needed at all. Pausing isn't just silence, it's an act of humility, a space to hear more than just words but the unspoken needs of another. When we resist the urge to fill every silence with our thoughts, we give way to something deeper: connection, empathy, and a chance to see beyond ourselves. Have you ever found yourself speaking just to be heard? Perhaps to prove your worth, or to silence an uncomfortable quiet? Lewis suggests that our need to speak often arises from self-centeredness. What if, instead, we focused on being present for others, as a mirror reflecting their needs, rather than a spotlight shining on our own? True communication means offering our silence as a gift, not as a withdrawal. It's in those still moments that we learn more, connect deeper, and understand beyond words. And when it does come time to share, let it be with intentionality and compassion. Share your experiences not to boast, but to uplift. Share your struggles not to burden, but to connect. Like Lewis's stories, let your words be a bridge to understanding, a place where others can find hope, solace, and encouragement. Ask yourself, does my story reveal grace? Does it illuminate the path for someone else, drawing them closer to hope and faith? When we speak from a place of love and selflessness, our words become more than mere sound, they become seeds sown in another's heart. In the end, mindful communication isn't about having all the right words, it's about creating sacred space for another's soul to be seen, felt, and heard. Pause, breathe, and listen with intention, for sometimes the most loving thing we can offer is not our voice, but our ears and our hearts. Listening is often seen as a passive act, but have you ever wondered how it could transform the very fabric of your relationships in life? C.S. Lewis once wrote, "We read to know we are not alone," suggesting that connection is rooted in understanding. So why not apply this to our conversations? Communication is not merely exchanging words, it's an invitation to step into another's world, a dance of giving and receiving that requires presence, humility, and genuine curiosity. Imagine what would happen if, instead of merely waiting for your turn to speak, you chose to listen deeply, not to respond but to understand. Have you ever felt truly heard? There's a quiet magic that happens when you are an unspoken feeling of being valued, noticed, and seen. And this is what makes the practice of listening a transformative gift, not just for others but for yourself as well. When you listen, you break down the walls of isolation and foster genuine connection. Think of Lewis's own writings. His stories invite readers to discover the deeper truths within themselves. In the same way, listening is an invitation to uncover hidden stories, to peel back layers of another's soul, and to witness the beauty and struggle within. The challenge lies in our intentionality. Can you practice holding back your own story to allow someone else's to breathe? Can you approach conversations with a heart of empathy, ready to hear not just the words spoken but the emotions behind them? In every pause, there's a space for understanding. In every silence, a moment for reflection. When you prioritize listening over speaking, you create an environment where others feel safe to share, where their struggles, hopes, and dreams have room to unfold. So next time you're tempted to fill the silence, remember this: every story you listen to enriches your own. And maybe one day, when someone asks you how you're doing, you'll find that your joy lies not in telling your own story first, but in being part of a tapestry of stories, a world where each person's voice matters. And in this act of listening, we draw closer to something far greater than ourselves, a more compassionate, deeply connected world, one conversation at a time. Listening is often seen as a passive act, but have you ever wondered how it could transform the very fabric of your relationships in life? C.S. Lewis once wrote, "We read to know we are not alone," suggesting that connection is rooted in understanding. So why not apply this to our conversations? Communication is not merely exchanging words, it's an invitation to step into another's world, a dance of giving and receiving that requires presence, humility, and genuine curiosity. Imagine what would happen if, instead of merely waiting for your turn to speak, you chose to listen deeply, not to respond but to understand. Have you ever felt truly heard? There's a quiet magic that happens when you are an unspoken feeling of being valued, noticed, and seen. And this is what makes the practice of listening a transformative gift, not just for others but for yourself as well. When you listen, you break down the walls of isolation and foster genuine connection. Think of Lewis's own writings. His stories invite readers to discover the deeper truths within themselves. In the same way, listening is an invitation to uncover hidden stories, to peel back layers of another's soul, and to witness the beauty and struggle within. The challenge lies in our intentionality. Can you practice holding back your own story to allow someone else's to breathe? Can you approach conversations with a heart of empathy, ready to hear not just the words spoken, but the emotions behind them? In every pause, there's a space for understanding. In every silence, a moment for reflection. When you prioritize listening over speaking, you create an environment where others feel safe to share, where their struggles, hopes, and dreams have room to unfold. So next time you're tempted to fill the silence, remember this: every story you listen to enriches your own. And maybe one day, when someone asks you how you're doing, you'll find that your joy lies not in telling your own story first, but in being part of a tapestry of stories, a world where each person's voice matters. And in this act of listening, we draw closer to something far greater than ourselves, a more compassionate, deeply connected world, one conversation at a time. Imagine for a moment that every word you speak, every gesture you make, is a thread woven into a grand tapestry not just of your own life, but of the lives around you. How would that change the way you communicate? How would that deepen your understanding of the unseen threads that connect us all? This isn't just about speaking louder, it's about listening deeper, reaching beneath the surface of our own stories to honor the sacred space where another's heart resides. For, as C.S. Lewis profoundly observed, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is the gateway to real connection, and it's in those raw moments of shared humanity that we find the threads of love and grace interwoven into the fabric of our lives. Can you recall a time when someone truly listened to you? When they gave you their full presence, free from judgment or distraction? How did it feel to be seen, to be heard, to be fully known? That's the power of mindful presence. It shifts the focus from self to others, creating a ripple effect of empathy and understanding. Just as Lewis speaks of a deeper magic from before the dawn of time, there's a deeper magic in the way we connect, a spiritual transformation that reshapes not only our hearts but the world around us. When we truly listen, we engage not just with words but with souls. We see beyond the visible, into the sacred stories that each person carries. This is your invitation to walk through life with intention, to let your words be a light, your silence be a sanctuary, and your listening a testament to the value of every human soul. In an age where so much is said but so little is understood, dare to be different. Be present, be engaged, be part of something greater than your own narrative. Remember that your voice has power, yes, but so does your listening. And in that sacred act of giving space, of offering your ear and your heart, you honor not only your own story but the untold beauty of every life you touch. In doing so, you'll find that the beauty of mindful communication is not just in the act of speaking, but in the gift of truly seeing and being seen. For isn't that what we all seek? A life where every thread, every voice, every soul is intricately and beautifully connected, revealing glimpses of a greater story, one written by the author of all life, who whispers to each of us, "You are known, you are loved, you are part of something infinitely more." In the noise of our lives, how often do we pause to ask ourselves, when was the last time I truly listened? Not just with ears, but with the heart fully open, fully present. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "To love at all is to be vulnerable, and listening, true listening, is an act of love that requires vulnerability." It means silencing our thoughts long enough to hear the voice of another, setting aside our need to respond, and being fully there for someone else. It's a risk, for to listen deeply is to open ourselves to another's pain, joy, struggle, and dreams. But can we find the courage to hold silence as sacred? Silence is not the absence of speech, but a space where connection is born. There is wisdom in knowing when to speak words that heal, and when to remain silent and offer the solace of simply being there. How often have you felt the weight of someone's presence, even when no words were spoken? It's in these silent moments that our presence often speaks the loudest. This intentional stillness allows love to be felt, trust to be built, and souls to connect. Consider Jesus, who not only spoke words of truth but often listened deeply to the cries of the suffering, to the heart of a sinner longing for grace. In those moments he was present, attentive, and loving. Lewis reminds us that we read to know we are not alone, but how much more so when we listen to let others know they are not alone. Every time we set aside our distractions to listen deeply, we reflect God's heart to others, and through this, we find our hearts transformed. So, are you willing to be more than a teller of stories? To be a holder of moments, a gentle listener, a presence that heals? Are you ready to be intentional in the way you show up, not just to tell your story, but to embrace those of others? Because mindful communication is not just a skill, but a gift we offer to the world. And in offering this gift, you become a vessel through which love flows freely, affecting every life you touch. It starts with a choice to be silent when the world screams for noise, to speak when words can lift up the brokenhearted, and to listen with an open heart, unafraid to step into another's world. The power of presence is a flame, one that can ignite hope, love, and connection in a world that craves real, authentic encounters. Will you choose today to be that change, to hold space for another, to listen and love deeply, and to live a life that tells the story of God's love in action? C.S. Lewis once wrote, "To love at all is to be vulnerable, but how often do we truly open ourselves to others?" In a world that celebrates achievement and expression, we may forget the art of simply being present, listening, and becoming a vessel for connection. Have you ever felt the pressure to be the speaker, the one with all the answers? Or perhaps a whisper inside tells you that your voice must always fill the silence. Yet, maybe it is in the silence, in the space between words, where true presence finds its depth and stories reveal their power. What if the greatest gift we can offer others isn't our words, but our ears? Our hearts, tender and open, ready to receive the burdens and joys of another. When Lewis spoke of filling the world with love, he wasn't merely calling us to act, but to pause to allow love to flow not just from us but through us, creating threads that weave hearts together. And in this weaving, we find our true story. A life not lived just for the telling but for listening, for holding the weight of another's soul with grace and humility. Imagine your next conversation as an opportunity to be fully present. What would it look like to lean in, not to respond, but to understand? In a time when words are tossed like seeds into the wind, be the fertile ground that receives, nurtures, and grows the seeds of connection. Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to be still, to listen without judgment, and then speak not to be right, but to join a story larger than your own. Because, as Lewis understood, the beauty of life unfolds in shared moments, in hearts that dare to connect beyond the surface. This is where true transformation happens, when we are brave enough to sit in the unknown, to welcome another's pain, to rejoice in their triumphs, and to carry their silence as our own. When we let go of the need to compare, to perform, to perfect, we find a truer, richer life waiting, one that values presence over presentation and empathy over eloquence. There will be days when you struggle, moments when fear or pride may pull you back to old habits of control or performance. And that's okay. Lewis reminds us that progress means getting nearer to the place you want to be, even if it involves steps backward. Embrace each stumble as a chance to grow, a moment to choose love over judgment, to be kind to yourself, just as you are kind to others. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the birthplace of courage and change. Every soul you meet carries their own battles, their own joys, their own story that longs to be heard. And by listening deeply, you invite healing, not just for them, but for yourself. When you create space for someone to share authentically, you honor their humanity and echo the grace God offers to each of us. The ripple of such presence extends beyond your single act. It becomes a wave of compassion that touches every heart along its path. So, take a deep breath, my friend. Step into this moment with an open heart. Let go of the need to speak first or to be seen, and instead choose to see, to hear, to embrace the world as it unfolds around you. It is in this practice of mindful presence, in the sacred silence of listening, that you live out a love that is both profound and transformative. And in doing so, you not only tell a beautiful story, you become a living testament to the power of connection, one heartbeat, one wordless exchange, one shared journey at a time. Consider this: what if your journey is not merely your own? What if the story of your life is part of a much grander narrative, a tapestry woven by every interaction, every word spoken, every act of love? C.S. Lewis once said, "There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal." This speaks deeply to the idea that each moment you share with another, every time you choose to listen, to support, to show up in the lives of those around you, you are partaking in a divine narrative far beyond the individual threads of your own life. Your actions echo in eternity, connecting to something much larger, the shared story of humanity. Have you ever paused to wonder how a simple act of kindness or a compassionate word changes the life of someone else? How the small, seemingly insignificant choices become catalysts for transformation? It's easy to think that only grand gestures or monumental decisions shape a meaningful life, But what if it's in those ordinary moments, those whispered prayers and silent sacrifices where true growth lies? Lewis believed that love, in its purest form, is both intentional and selfless. He wrote, "Love is not affectionate feeling, but a steady wish for the loved person's ultimate good as far as it can be obtained." And so, the call is to persistently show up, love deeply, and listen with intention, for, in doing so, you help shape the most beautiful of all stories, the one in which we learn to see beyond ourselves to truly see each other. But where does that leave you? It leaves you with the power to change not just your story, but the world around you. Growth is not always loud and bold. It is often the whisper and the silence, the conscious decision to be present, to set aside your own ego, and to simply be there for others. When you choose to put down your phone, to embrace a moment of stillness, to ask, "Is this kind? Is this necessary?" you are choosing transformation over passivity. And these choices are not insignificant. They are the drops that carve the canyon, the breaths that breathe life into the weary. In a world that clamors for control, certainty, and perfection, how liberating it is to let go, to embrace vulnerability and find beauty in uncertainty. It is in the moments of surrender, when you are stretched beyond what is comfortable, that God works most powerfully. Lewis spoke of the need to surrender to a higher call. The Christian does not think God will love us because we are good, but that God will make us good because He loves us. Trusting the process of growth means accepting the mess, the imperfections, and the not knowing. It is to recognize that, even in the discomfort, there is a refining happening, a shaping of your deepest wisdom and truest self. And in finding this strength, this wisdom, this authenticity, do not keep it to yourself. Share it. Let it spill over into the lives of others. Be the light that Lewis spoke of when he wrote, "Don't shine so others can see you. Shine so that through you, others can see Him." Your journey is not just for you. It is a path that leads to others, a story that inspires healing and wholeness in the world. It is about becoming a voice for the unheard, a balm for the hurting, a presence of love that bears witness to the transformative power of grace. Remember, the story you are living, with all its struggles, joys, and complexities, is part of a larger story. The story of us, the story of connection, the story of a world restored, one heart at a time, through the simple, intentional acts of showing up, listening, and loving with all you have. Trust this journey. Trust that each step you take is not just your own, but a step toward a world transformed by the power of love and presence. So keep showing up, keep listening, keep loving, keep being the change you wish to see in the world, and trust that in doing so, you're not just changing your own life, but the lives of every person you touch, every story you hear, every moment you embrace. And as you do, remember this: you are not alone. You are part of a community, a collective, a world of people who are all navigating their own journeys, their own stories, their own paths to presence and connection and love. Reach out to them, support them, celebrate them, and let them support and celebrate you in return. Because we're all in this together. We're all part of the same story, the same journey, the same beautiful, messy, miraculous dance of life. And when you find yourself struggling, when you find yourself doubting, when you find yourself wondering if any of this really matters, come back to this moment. Come back to this breath. Come back to this presence, this connection, this love. Because that's what it's all about in the end, not the destination, but the journey. Not the perfection, but the practice. Not the outcome, but the intention, the presence, the love. So keep showing up, keep listening, keep loving, keep being a force for good in the world, a light in the darkness, a voice for the voiceless. Keep being the change you wish to see, the presence you wish to feel, the love you wish to give and receive. And trust that in doing so, you're not just living your own story, but being a part of the greatest story ever told, the story of us. The story of connection. The story of a world transformed by the power of presence and the beauty of a life lived with intention. It won't always be easy. There will be moments of doubt, moments of fear, moments of resistance and discomfort and pain. But those moments too are part of the journey, part of the story, part of the beautiful, messy, miraculous process of growth and transformation. So don't run from them. Don't hide from them. Don't resist them. Instead, lean into them, embrace them, allow them to teach you, to stretch you, to guide you to a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. Because it's in those moments of discomfort, those moments of challenge, those moments of uncertainty that we find our greatest strength, our deepest wisdom, our most authentic truth. And as you find that strength, that wisdom, that truth, remember to share it with the world. Remember to be a beacon of hope, a source of inspiration, a presence of love and compassion in a world that so desperately needs it. Because that's what this journey is all about, not just transforming ourselves, but transforming the world. Not just living our own story, but being a part of the greater story, the story of us, the story of connection, the story of a world healed and whole. In a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, we are called to persistently engage, to listen intently, and to love generously. C.S. Lewis, in his profound reflections on human experience, reminds us that the simplest acts of kindness and presence resonate deeply with others. Have you ever considered how your commitment to being present can create ripples of change? Each time you show up for someone in need, you are not just altering your own narrative, you are intricately weaving your story into the fabric of countless others. It is vital to recognize that you hold immeasurable worth. Your unique journey, with its myriad ups and downs, contributes to a collective tapestry of human experience. Lewis once suggested that what you see and what you hear depends a great deal on where you are standing. It also depends on what sort of person you are. This invites us to ponder, what do you bring to the world through your unique perspective? Your story is a vital thread in the intricate design of existence, and it matters not for your accomplishments, but for the essence of who you are. Do you sometimes wrestle with feelings of inadequacy? It's essential to remember that your value does not hinge on societal standards or external achievements, but is rooted in the divine tapestry of your existence. You are enough, just as you are. Reflect on the love that surrounds you, the kindness you can extend, and the miracles that arise when you fully embrace your true self. When you live from a place of wholeness, you become a conduit for transformation, sparking change not just within yourself, but in the hearts of those around you. So, what happens when you embody this truth? When you lead with love and authenticity, the magic unfolds, miracles manifest in the mundane moments of life. You become a beacon of hope, illuminating the path for others who may be wandering in darkness. The essence of your presence can offer solace to the weary, and your voice can uplift those who feel voiceless. Lewis beautifully articulated this idea: you come to know the world is not divided between the good and the bad, but rather between those who are alive and those who are not. As you continue this journey, keep in mind that life is not solely about where you end up, but rather the experiences and intentions you cultivate along the way. It's about the practice of being present, the art of loving deeply, and the commitment to show up time and time again. The world transforms gradually, one heartbeat, one breath, one genuine moment at a time. So, let this be your guiding mantra: keep showing up, keep listening, and keep loving. In doing so, you become an integral part of a greater narrative, the story of humanity, interconnected and thriving through the power of compassion. Trust that by embodying this love, you contribute to a legacy far beyond yourself, creating a more profound impact than you can ever fully realize. Ultimately, it is in this shared journey of connection and intention that we find the essence of what it means to be alive, to be human, and to be the change we so fervently wish to see in the world. The power of presence and intentional living, a reflection inspired by C.S. Lewis. What if the essence of our existence is woven into the fabric of our presence? As C.S. Lewis insightfully remarked, what you see and what you hear depends a great deal on where you are standing. It also depends on what sort of person you are. This profound truth invites us to explore the significance of intentionality in our daily lives. Our world, rich with its myriad experiences, can be transformed through mindful engagement, one heartbeat, one breath, and one moment at a time. Are we truly aware of the potential held in our simple acts of presence? The journey begins with you, dear friend. With your willingness to be fully present, listening intently, sharing authentically, and embodying love, your impact ripples outward, creating change that echoes in the lives of others. In a world often marked by distraction and detachment, the call to show up for ourselves and for one another becomes a sacred responsibility. Lewis emphasized the power of choice in the Screwtape Letters, reminding us that our choices, no matter how small, shape our reality and that of those around us. Have you considered how your choices can influence the world for the better? As you pause to take a deep breath, allow yourself to embrace this moment. Let your story unfold in the quiet spaces between breaths. In this intricate dance of life, it's not just about the grand gestures, it's the subtle, beautiful, and sometimes messy moments that create a tapestry of connection and meaning. Each heartbeat tells a story, every breath an invitation to deeper understanding. Are you ready to engage in this miraculous dance, recognizing that each step you take contributes to the greater narrative? You are not merely an observer in this unfolding drama, you are a vital participant. Your presence is a gift to those around you, and your love has the power to heal and uplift. Do not underestimate the value of your contributions. In the grand tapestry of existence, your thread is irreplaceable. Lewis once wrote, "You come of the Lord Adam and the Lady Eve. You were made to walk on the earth and be beautiful. Embrace your beauty and the essence of who you are, for it is precisely this authenticity that enriches the lives of others." So, I encourage you, keep showing up, keep listening, keep loving. Understand that in each action, however small, you're participating in a divine narrative, the story of us, where connection reigns supreme and transformation is possible. Each moment you dedicate to being present is a step toward a more intentional life, a life that reflects the profound beauty of existence itself. Let the magic unfold around you. Open your heart to the miracles waiting to be discovered. Life, in all its complexity, offers us opportunities for growth and connection. As you engage with the world, remember to breathe deeply and allow each moment to fill you with purpose. And always, always remember, you are enough. You are worthy. You are loved just as you are. In embracing this truth, you unlock the greatest story of all, the journey of becoming, the experience of being alive, and the joy of transforming the world with the power of presence and love. So take a moment, reflect, and let your heart resonate with the beauty of intentional living, for therein lies the essence of who you truly are.